Next up, we have Chris Olave, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, who, I just mentioned it in my Garrett Wilson video a little bit ago, but I'm sure, again, people are freaking out over the round grade that they see on the screen right now, right? Second round, 80.6. What does that mean? Well, it does mean that I'm probably not as high on Chris as many people in the national media are. However, to put it into some context, again, I've graded 80 guys so far, and this rating, even though it's 80.6 in the second round, quote unquote, he's the 22nd highest player on my big board. So take that for what you will. There are a couple positions I haven't fully fleshed out yet, so even with that, he would ultimately be one of my top 32 players, I can almost assuredly say. So even though the number itself is perhaps a little bit lower than it maybe seems like it should be to you, if I'm harsh on everybody, then it really doesn't make a difference in terms of the order, right? And that's why I have to reiterate 22nd overall on my big board at the moment. So in terms of just why am I maybe not as high on Olave as some other people? A variety of reasons. I thought there was stuff he did very, very well, and then I thought there were areas of his game where he left something to be desired in a couple different areas, and we'll touch on that here. So first and foremost, the route running. I've seen a lot of people saying that he is the best route runner in the class. I've seen people saying if he's not the best, he's top 3, and I thought he was good. I thought he has the ability, the physical ability to run whatever route he wants to, right? For those who aren't familiar, he's 4.39 40-yard dash guy, right? So crazy fast, got good agility. He didn't run the shuttle and 3-cone and whatnot at the combine. You don't need it to know that he's got good enough agility to run any route in the book. To me, where he disappointed was that next level, right? Sure, you can do it physically, but if you're not selling your routes and if you're not setting up your routes, then even if you can do it, the cornerbacks aren't really biting on anything else, right? So, whereas in the previous 2 videos that I recorded here, Jameson Williams and Garrett Wilson, I mentioned how they did a very good job at, say, if they were running a post route, making the cornerback, until the absolute millisecond that they broke it inside, they were doing whatever they could to make the corner think it was a corner route, right? Make them think they were breaking outside, only to, as soon as that cornerback flips their hips, to break it inside, right? And then that buys you extra time. That lets the speed take over, because while that guy's got to turn and recover, you are in the clear and running towards the pylon. And in that regard, I didn't see a lot of that out of Olave. Excuse me. He was giving me tongue-tied there for a second, but he has the ability to do anything and everything he wants to on the football field. I just didn't see that nuance, that chess game, the mental aspect of it manifest in his play as a route runner. In terms of the speed and quickness, I gave him a 14.75 out of 15. That was my first note I made. Burst and acceleration flies off the tape in all caps. I thought that didn't take a genius to see, but it's something I saw. So what does that say? Potentially good, potentially bad, I suppose. In terms of his hands and consistency, I thought his hands were generally solid. There weren't an overwhelming number of drops or anything like that. I actually thought he had better hands comparatively to, say, Garrett Wilson on the other side of the field, but I also didn't think he was necessarily the best in terms of hauling the ball in catching traffic and contested catch situations. So even though the hands in the open field were good when he was open, I thought that at times when there was a guy on his back hip, or maybe a guy that he was getting ready to get hit by across the middle of the field, for instance, I didn't think he was quite as secure there. And in that regard, that came into one of my biggest knocks on him. That was, I thought he played a lot smaller than his size. He's listed on the OSU website as 6'1", 189. Came in at the combine and was 6 foot, 6 feet and a half, 187. So he was, he was listed a little bit bigger than he was, but I thought he played smaller than that combine number even at times. Just, there wasn't a lot of strength, there wasn't a lot of physicality. I hate to say that there wasn't a lot of toughness, but one of the things that really got me were his after the catch opportunities, where he was he was almost too willing to give himself up as a runner. Out of the 6 games that I watched of him, which is, 300 snaps, I can't think of a time where I really saw him, say, fight for extra yards where a guy wasn't coming at him from behind, right? Like if a guy was coming at him head on and he had the opportunity to dip out of bounds, it seemed like that was something that was in his best interest. And maybe that'll change at the next level, but that kind of disappointed me a little bit. And I get it because he is smaller than just about everybody that's trying to tackle him, but still, so is Garrett Wilson, right? We see him putting a shoulder down. So is Jamison Williams, and we see him at least trying to juke guys out and make them miss with his agility. Olave didn't really seem to do much of that. He could make you miss with his speed, most certainly, but past that, I just didn't really see a lot. Another area that I thought was interesting that I had heard a lot more about than I actually saw was his tracking, his body control, his ability to climb the ladder and go up and make some high point catches. That was another reason that I said I thought he played a little bit smaller, because I just didn't really see it. There were a couple deep passes along the sidelines that he hauled in, but past that, mostly everything was unsuccessful and not really even close on Olave's part. And one thing that I thought was interesting is he actually had a 32-inch vertical at the combine, which for you and I, that's probably pretty good, but for an NFL wide receiver, especially of his athletic profile, otherwise, that was really low. That's in like the bottom 26th percentile of any wide receiver at the combine in the modern day. So that was a little bit questionable. Like, why can he not jump relative to his peers? I don't know, but I do believe that I saw that quite a bit on the field in terms of climbing the ladder vertically. I thought he was able to do it laterally a little bit. I kind of mentioned this in the Garrett Wilson video, but when it came to some of these toe tap grabs, I thought he did an alright job, but at times it almost felt like he was struggling to tempo down when he was approaching the sidelines on plays like that, right? Like, instead of, going dead leg and being able to lay out, it felt like he was, almost approaching them so quickly that by the time he got there, he was unable to stay in bounds and make a play. Otherwise, I thought his release and just general releases were pretty solid. It's it's tough to press and play up on a guy that has the type of speed he does and is able to push you vertically like he is. And in that regard, maybe his releases themselves aren't always the most nuanced, but the way defenders reacted to them had to be, right? Because there's not a lot of room for error in that respect. And I gave him an 8 out of 10 there. I thought that was one of his better areas. Lastly, really, was the blocking and physicality, and I kind of already talked about it with this size and strength issue. Not a lot of effort even as a blocker, which was very disheartening. I gave him a 1.5 out of 5, which besides Rondell Moore last year, who he has like 6 inches of height on, it seems, I gave, he was the only guy I've given a lower grade to. So that speaks for itself potentially. One thing that you gotta have as a receiver is you have to be willing to make an impact elsewhere. And that's something I've heard everybody say on this offense. Oh, there's only one ball. How are they supposed to spread it between 2 first-round wide receivers? The young sophomore wide receiver that'll be a top pick next year, a third-round tight end, some running backs that are talented, right? Blah, 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 blah. I've heard all that, but that's fine. Maybe there was that much talent out there, but then while you're not getting the ball for those stretches of the games, go let somebody else eat, right? Like, it can't just all be about you. You got to sometimes be a selfless player and put your body in the line of fire at times and go take on a safety or a corner or a linebacker even. And there just wasn't that with Olave. It just felt like there was a lot of preservation with him almost. And was that just an attempt to get through the season and get to the NFL where he's going to, rip the caution tape off and throw caution to the wind essentially? Or is that just the type of guy that he is? And if it's the latter, which is almost what I'm leaning towards at this point, I think that's one of the main reasons I'm lower on him than the rest. Otherwise, in terms of the size and athleticism, I gave him a little bit of a lower size grade out of 5 because the weight, 187 pounds, again, is rather light. And like I said, I thought he played decently small. And then athleticism, I gave him a 4.25 out of 5 for the sole fact that vertical was questionable. despite the 40s being incredible. So all that came out to a 77.5 raw grade. Multiply that by the 1.04 times position premium, which is essentially what I do is I take 4% of their grade and give it back to each wide receiver. I do that for every position, just in differing levels to account for positional value. And for Olave, it came out to an 80.6, which was just a little bit outside of my quote-unquote first-round grades. But like I said in the intro, if I only have 16 first-round grades, just for example, then there's 16 other guys that are going to be going in the first round. So you got to take somebody, right? And in that regard, if I was a team, I would feel decently comfortable taking Olave in that mid-20s range, at least from where I'm looking right now. But I don't know how much earlier I would feel comfortable taking him as a GM, just because of some of the concerns I laid out. Now, if he brought something else to the table in terms of the route running, brought some more nuance to it, was maybe a little bit more physical, a little bit more willing to put his body on the line, things of that nature, I think he would probably be in my top, I don't want to say top 10, but he could certainly be higher than he is now, right? Especially over some of the non-wide receiver names, right? Some of the edge rushers, for instance, some of the tackles, like right now he's below Tyler Smith out of Tulsa on my big board, and it's like, well, you have the physical tools to be better than that. It's just kind of frustrating not to see him a little bit higher, but hey, that's what I saw in film. So in that regard, if you enjoyed my film observations and evaluation of Mr. Olave, make sure you guys leave a like, subscribe, comment, do all those things down below, and ultimately, hopefully tune into the next one, right? Because I'm posting a bunch of these videos here today right before the draft, so hopefully you guys are enjoying, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Peace, guys.